You are listening to the best of the Stephen A. Smith and Ryan Ruocco Show on ESPNNewYork.com. Hear them weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York 98.7 FM. The Stars will be out tonight at Target Field in Minneapolis, where Derek Jeter will play in the final All-Star game of his remarkable career. Is it starting to sink in for Yankee fans that we don't have much Derek Jeter baseball left?
You know what? It actually is starting to sink in a little bit, Steven. When you think about that, only 68 games left. It's getting towards the end of the road here with the captain.
What do you mean?
I mean, we don't have much time left watching him.
Look, man.
It's kind of
over.
sinking in.
Well, listen, it's a sinking ship. That's what the New York Yankees are. We all understand this. We don't like it, but we would be able to accept it if you didn't spend the money this summer and you just had the no-name talent that you had on here, Ryan. The problem is that you spent the money. You passed on Robinson Cano. You reallocated those funds to a Boston Red Sox. Really? And then you bring in Carlos Beltran. Okay, he ain't getting it done. And again, Brian McCann, who, dare I say, Atlanta for decades has been known for its pitching. We understand how important catchers are to pitchers, managing them, managing the game, etc. If they were willing to let McCann go, what does that tell you?
Well,
and that's at least raise an eyebrow. That's all I'm trying to say.
I understand. The other thing that's interesting to me, Steven, is what do you do now around the deadline if you're the Yankees, right? Because the AL East is – now the Orioles have started to play better, but it's still very much up for grabs. And there is still that second wild card position. You're 3.5 out of that. You're 5 out of the AL East. There isn't a lot of real separation. Now, any other year – I would say if you were the Yankees, you would bag it and be sellers, not buyers, at the trade deadline, because even though that is totally counterintuitive to the normal philosophy, it would make more sense as they are on the brink of at least trying to rebuild, it would seem, would be the kosher move. But because it's Derek Jeter's last season, like I wonder if that tilts the front office scales at all to be buyers rather than sellers.
I mean, what do we have,
deadline.
Ryan? What do we have? The Kelly Johnsons, the Brian Roberts of the world, Teixeira, you never know when his wrist is hurting or healthy. Derek Jeter's older now. A-Rod suspended. You know, I mean, we've got to the point where Ichiro is still of extreme value to us. You're just looking at Ellsbury. He's underachieved. I mean, you're just Brett Gardner. You wonder, look, what do you want me to do? Your pitching staff, your rotation is decimated.
80% of it's injured.
80% of it is injured. 80% of it is injured, and you're still acknowledging that ain't the damn problem.
It's true.
The problem is your offense, and this is why 80% of your rotation is injured. I mean, come on. I'm looking at a Brian Cashman, and I'm like, I've seen people fired for less. There have been plenty of executives in recent memory in the sport of Major League Baseball who have been let go, who did not have the money that he had to work with. Now, I'm not advocating the dismissal of Brian Cashman. I actually like him, and I root for him. And he's been a part of some glorious years with the New York Yankees. But he's been able to operate, you know, as far as I'm concerned, with relative impunity. And that has to stop. Because the reality is that had this been anybody else, we'd have been calling for their hide. I can't give Brian Cashman a pass anymore. Remember he tried to play hardball with Jeter years ago?
Yeah.
Remember how we were talking about the farm system, building that up, you know, and how we weren't going to just spend money the way that we used to? Well, okay. Where are your tradable assets? Where are your deal-making assets? And why is it that you got a bunch of no-names in your clubhouse? And, oh, by the way, what's up with all of these damn injuries? Who's the strength and conditioning coach? What are they doing? How's everybody falling apart?
I think it's a plague within the game, though, when it comes to pitchers.
I understand. You know what I'm saying. I know it's not literally
well, but
the fault of
they
a
are
strength and
going to
conditioning
have
coach.
to.
But I'm just saying, my Lord. Listen, let me put it to you this way. Because we all know that my favorite owner of all time was George Steinbrenner. I have an affinity and affection for this man. God rest his wonderful, winning soul. Okay? Here's my thing. If this were George Steinbrenner, you trying to tell me the strength and conditioning coach wouldn't have been called into his office? Could you explain to me why all of these guys falling apart on me? Is that possible, Ryan? Am I beyond the pale there?
No.
Even though we understand there's injuries that take place within the game, stuff happens. We all know that.
Yeah,
but why is it happening to my team compared to everybody else? Who else has 80% of their rotation decimated?
Right.
Who has that?
But still, I mean, honestly, though, Steven, I don't think it has anything to do with them. It's Nova, elbow.
I know, Ryan, you're right. I'm not even disputing it. In my heart, let me say this. In my heart, in terms of common sense, I know you're right.
But you don't want to be sensible right now?
What I'm trying to say to you is that if you're George Steinbrenner, are you not asking that question? Can you honestly and legitimately say to me, Ryan, knowing the game of baseball the way that you do, if you own the Yankees and you saw bodies just dropping like that, you wouldn't call your strength and conditioning coach into your office and say, could you explain to me what's going on? You wouldn't at least ask that question?
Well, you might, but
that's all I'm saying. I'm not going any further than that.
But what does that do? I mean, I don't need to advocate illogical decisions.
Well, again, it's not a decision. It's simply saying, see, when you allocate responsibility, the objective is to make sure everybody is doing their job at an elite level. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
So now I have to dissect everything that's going on. Because the reason that you hire people, Ryan, are to prevent these things. Like when somebody's out there and we applaud and laud the fact that a particular athlete works his tail off and he's working hard and he's always in phenomenal shape, right?
Yes.
Why do we do that? Because it elevates the possibility that their durability will stand up to whatever level of scrutiny they might get exposed to. These are the kind of things you think about. And all I'm saying is, no, it's not anybody's fault. But could I have somebody else out there that could possibly do the job better? It's just a question. Because if CeCe Sabathia goes down, that's one thing. Sabathia, Pineda, Nova, now Tanaka. You understand? I mean, when I'm thinking about Tanaka, when you come over from Japan, are the balls bigger or smaller over there?
Well, no, but here's the.
I mean,
can we get that as a drop?
And you're throwing the ball every 6 days as opposed to every 5 days. So what I'm saying
7
to
days,
you,
once a week,
6, 7 days. So what I'm saying to you, Ryan, is this: when you consider how volatile he is in terms of how he throws the baseball, right? Don't you have to take those things into consideration? You're going from 7 days to 5 days.
Well, yeah, but Stephen, this is why
7 years, 155. Yeah. I'm just saying to you that these are the kind of questions that, to me, they're valid if I'm broaching them with Brian Cashman.
Well, that's different than the strength and conditioning guy.
Well, I'm just saying. But my point is this: are you trying to tell me there aren't certain strength and conditioning coaches that are better than others?
Well, sure there are.
Well, that's all I'm saying. So I'm looking at you and I'm asking, are you the best?
No, but here's the thing. That, to me, putting anything on him with the rash of injuries to the pitchers is ridiculous. Pineda had a previous shoulder injury. Elbows happen to everybody. That was Tanaka and Nova. And CeCe has a pre-existing knee condition. But
I'm trying to explain to you that I agree with you on its face. But when I have this many problems, all I'm trying to say to you is I'm scrutinizing every damn thing. That's my point. I'm not trying to sit there and say, oh, those injuries are the fault of the strength and conditioning coach. I'm trying to say to you, I am the New York Yankees. I have the highest payroll in baseball. I went out and I spent over $200 million. I want the best. Are you the best? I don't need good. I don't need average. I need the best with the money that I'm doling out. Miami has a very, very good medical staff, according to the players that play for the Miami Heat, right? Mm-hmm. But when Shaq went to Phoenix, he was raving about them. They're all professionals. They're all good, but some are better than others. You got doctors all over the place. Where does everybody go? Dr. Andrews. Why, Ryan? He's the best. So what I'm saying is when you have that kind of stuff going on, don't just summarily dismiss it as if, well, you know what, I can't even look at these nondescript individuals and ask those questions because I've got multi-millions invested in these dudes. If I hire you, I kind of need them to last.
Well,
everybody's got a role.
I agree.
Figure it out.
But this is my problem. I totally agree with that. And I think it's fair for the organization to look at things those ways. They're the ones paying the money. They're the ones making those decisions. I don't think it's fair for people like you and I to because we have no idea. We're not educated on whether or not those people are good at their jobs or not.
And I'm saying to you, you are right if I'm making a definitive judgment about them. You are wrong if you imply that I don't have a right to ask the question. I'm saying to you, I'm not accusing the man. I'm wondering if the Yankees are wondering. What are you looking at? I have a right to ask the damn question. When bodies are just falling by the wayside, I can't look at the man that's hired to keep him healthy and in shape. I can't look at him and say, well, what exactly is it that you're doing? I can't ask. I think I can.
I think there are a lot of other questions you're asking first, though, when it comes to
Okay, that's fair. I agree with that. But that's still one of the questions I'm asking. Just to put everybody on notice. I'm scrutinizing everything when I pay this amount of money. That's all I'm saying.
Stephen A. Smith, Ryan Ruocco with you on ESPN New York 98.7 FM. I'll get to that Jeter cut I was talking about a little bit later on. We're going to have Tim Kurkjian join us at 2:15, and we'll play for you what I thought was an interesting Jeter soundbite. Continue to tweet at us, at Stephen A. Smith, at Ryan Ruocco, with how you think Jeter should be honored today. I'm just curious in our creative audience if we get some good ideas from you guys.
Oh, that you're curious about. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yes, I am. There's logic behind that. That I'm curious about.
Oh, there's no logic behind me asking a question.
No, I just told you every single one of their injuries and why it makes sense. And you just want to go after the poor strength and conditioning coach.
I don't think I'm going after him. You always try to paint me as a bad guy.
No, I think you're a great guy.
Actually, I'm a very nice guy.
I always tell people that, and you tell me not to tell people that you're a nice guy.
That is true. Yeah. But I'm just saying that it's all right to ask the question, Ryan. It's all right to ask the question. But I would have joined the Sith myself. There we go.
You did say that. So Brian Windhorst, I thought, wrote a fascinating story today about LeBron James and his contract. And we thought it was so interesting that Brian should explain it to you, because a lot of people have been asking about the 2-year deal that LeBron signed and why he did. Brian's going to join us in a moment and give that explanation. We'll get back to Jeter in a little bit with Tim Kurkjian, but Brian will have those answers for us next. Stephen A. Smith, Ryan Ruocco on ESPN New York.
We just listened to Brian Windhorst say all of that about Carmelo Anthony in terms of the contracts that he could have signed.
Yes.
I think I've told you that on many occasions. Have I not?
That what?
In terms of what Melo had to do, how it could have been the big three in Miami, how it was supposed to be those three instead of Bosh. The list goes on and on. But the one thing that I will say, all right, and I'm not going to get into a debate about the 11% as opposed to 1% or whatever the case may be. All I'm going to say is that everybody talks to who they talk to. I talk to who I talk to. And Brian Windhorst knows a lot, but he does not know who I talk to. He doesn't even know if I talk to LeBron. So, or anybody else for that matter. So,
just to clarify for people, when you say 11%, you're talking about how much he got from Beats by Dre's sale.
Well, how much he invested in it, yeah.
Right.
How much he got. Exactly. So
the reports were around $30 million.
That would be in excess of $300 million. Okay? But I'll leave that alone. Because remember, they got $3 billion from that deal. Okay? That's what they sold, Beats by Dre. So what I'm saying to you is that, but forget all of that. Let's get to the Carmelo Anthony thing. Carmelo Anthony is somebody, and this is what people don't realize about LeBron James. He's a physical freak of nature. He's in impeccable condition. He's a physical specimen, the likes we've never seen. You see how chiseled he is, Ryan, how massive he is. Now look at Melo. Melo can play. Melo can ball. He ain't in that kind of shape. He's not built like that. And so as a result of it, you find yourself concerned about that one injury decimating your career. When you combine that with the fact that you don't bring in the money that LeBron James brings in, of course you're going to think differently. So when people say that Melo messed up, you may make the argument that he messed up by not opting out of his contract in 2010. Say that. But he certainly has not messed up in terms of getting his money, because unlike LeBron, Melo don't have that kind of money coming in off the court. Neither does anybody else. LeBron is one of a kind. LeBron is Jordan-esque. And even with Jordan, it was about sneakers. It wasn't about all the business ventures that LeBron is involved in. So we have to keep that in mind. And we also have to understand, and it's very important that we understand, that while you look at LeBron and what he does off the court, and understanding that far eclipses any of the athletes themselves, not only is Melo concerned about getting hurt and being without that money, you have to also understand that he is somebody who knows he's not LeBron. So even if he were to opt out, or even if he were to be in a position where he and LeBron are together, there's only one LeBron. That don't mean that your off the court dollars are going to be comparable to his, because he'll be getting most, if not all, of the endorsements. So it's not beyond the pale for these guys to go the route of the money, and it's unfair to deem it a mistake on their part, because they have to weigh all of those things.
Right. It's not a mistake if he tears his ACL this year. He's still got $122 million guaranteed coming his way no matter what. I agree. It's all about personal preference. To call it a mistake is too strong. However, what I would say is, this is the risk that many people are always faced with in business that they do or do not take. I think about a story that Pat Summerall, and I don't know, Jeff, if you could find it, if we still have it, but it's a fascinating story about Madden video games. And Pat Summerall and John Madden were approached by EA and were offered either, I believe it was something like $10,000 at the time, or stake in EA and in the game. And Summerall took the money, Madden took the stake, and you can imagine how that went financially from there forth. Actually, Stephen, I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but it was really interesting. Here was Pat Summerall telling that story on air with me and Lumberg, I believe, about 2.5 years ago. Take a listen.
Confidentially, I'll tell you that the people that put the game together came to us. We were working together at the time, and they came to us and said, we don't have much money. Nobody does when they start to negotiate. And they said, we can either give you stock in the company or we can give you money. And I'd been around the business a little while, and so I said, well, I'll take the money. And John said, I'll take the stock. So the stock, I don't know how much it's worth now, about $20 million, I think. And the money is long gone. So I made a big mistake in the negotiations right there. Yeah, they came to us and asked us if we'd be the voice on the first game.
So, I mean, it's a fascinating story, Stephen, and I just think it's pertinent because of this. Brian's perspective on it is, yeah, you're right. That is somewhat of a risk. Those are the risks you take. But his thing is not just about the, off-court earnings. It's also just purely basketball, that Melo could have made a pretty penny in year one and then still signed an equally lucrative 5-year deal afterwards if he wanted to, whereas now he may not get in year 6 what he would have gotten in year one.
That's true, but what if he got injured in year one? And then there are others who believe that Melo had all of this leverage. Well, he had leverage as far as the money. But as far as it pertains to the terms, the New York Knicks had something going for them too. Like, for example, the New York Knicks could simply say, you're not getting all of this money from us without giving us a commitment. You don't get to sit there and say, well, we can leave you after another year. We can go through all of this again. No.
You're right. We don't know what they said. You're right.
And nobody's in a position. Nobody else was in a position to give Melo this money. Nobody. You understand the collective bargaining agreement stipulates that in order for you to re-up and sign a max deal, multi-year deal, you have to be with your new team for 3 years? You don't just get to go and do it. LeBron signed essentially a 1-year deal for the max that Cleveland had to offer. But in order to get the kind of max dollars the New York Knicks would have been able to offer Melo, he'd have to be with his new team for 3 years. So LeBron will drag this out, and get as much as he can every season. And we get all of that. But please understand that it's a lot easier for him to do because of how many outlets he has to make money. Melo and those boys don't enjoy that luxury. So I understand.
And the other part of it really quickly, too, Stephen, is when you're talking, it's one thing if you're talking about a quantity that does not set you up for life. When you are, like $122 million, it's not that easy to take that and say, no, but you know what, I'm fine. Because you realize that no matter what, even if there was 200 to be made, with 122, you're fine no matter what.
LeBron made more money and he saved more money. But by this contract, understand that Melo can really, literally walk in Nobu restaurant, trip over a chair, and shatter his knee for life, and his $122 million is guaranteed.
I like
today.
Pick out Nobu for.
I'm just saying Nobu.
It's a great spot. Great spot.
Red Eye Grill, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
All I'm saying to you is that he can get hurt today, and he can look at his family and say, "Well, we got $122 million coming over the next 5 years."
Right. I got you. Stephen A. Smith, Ryan Ruocco with you.
Can't call that a mistake.
Not at all. ESPN New York 98.7 FM. All right. Tim Kurkjian, I thought he told a really interesting story about Jeter that I heard earlier today. We'll have him relay that. Plus, just give us some perspective on the captain as we get ready for his final All-Star game tonight, which you'll be able to listen to here on ESPN New York. Tim Kurkjian, one of Stephen A.'s favorite people, joins us next on ESPN New York.
Thanks for listening to the best of the Stephen A. Smith and Ryan Ruocco Show on ESPNNewYork.com. Be sure to listen weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York 98.7 FM.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next six-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The NASCAR Nationwide Series at Chicago, Saturday at 8 Eastern on ESPN2.
You are listening to the best of the Stephen A. Smith and Ryan Ruocco Show on ESPNNewYork.com. Hear them weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York 98.7 FM.
Tim Kurkjian with great perspective on the captain joins us now on the Lexus of Route 10 Celebrity Hotline. How is it there in Minnesota, Tim?
Well, it was really cold last night, and it was rainy. I remind you, it's July the 15th, and it's cold here. But it's great because last year it was so hot in New York. People were complaining how hot it was. I'm not complaining about anything. I'm just glad to be here, and it's not going to rain tonight, so we're all good.
What kind of a night are you expecting for Derek Jeter, Tim?
Well, I hope he goes 2 for 2, and then I hope they take him out of the game, and I hope they do it like they did it with Mariano last year or something close to that. As you remember, it was one of the great teams in All-Star history for me last year when they sent him out to the mound by himself and let him stand there and have everyone cheer just for him. That's what should happen to Jeter tonight.
Well,
that's how important he is to the game. If they don't do it that way, then I'm sure they're going to send him out there with everyone else and then take him out before the inning starts, send another shortstop out to replace him so he gets to run off by himself because, again, he deserves that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. And for those who don't quite understand it, including people I work with on TV, I would like you to explain to listeners, why does Derek Jeter deserve exactly that kind of swan song?
Because, Vinay, he has run hard to first base every single time for 20 years. And that's where it starts. That's the reason he's the captain of the Yankees, is that nobody has done the job in a more professional way than Derek Jeter. And then you add in how great he is. To me, he's the third greatest shortstop of all time. That's my list, not the official list. To me, he's one of the six greatest Yankees of all time. That's my list, not official list. If you're in the top six of Yankees, you're really doing something. And more important than those, of course, he has been the face of baseball for the last 10 years, if not 15 years. And he will be difficult to replace on that end. Also, I once asked Tino Martinez, tell me a Derek Jeter story that I've never heard. He said if he has one beer, he is not getting behind the wheel of a car under any circumstance. So if we go out and suddenly there's a beer there and he drinks it, he's not driving. He's taking a cab or somebody else is driving, but that's just the way he's done it, and that's why he stayed away from controversy for 20 years in New York. That is remarkable in itself.
Tim, that is such an awesome story, and I think that's the kind of thing that is so interesting on a day like today, because for somebody who's been covered with, so many different, people around him for so many years, it's hard sometimes to find that new stuff, and that's a great story I've never heard that gives you some insight into the kind of guy he is. And it's interesting, Tim, and you know the tangibles and the numbers in baseball history. I feel like sometimes the legend around Jeter and his moments and his clutch memories and all of that, it's so pronounced that we actually underrate his tangibles as a player. You think that's fair?
I think that's fair, but I've said this before, and I really believe this, and I think Stephen A. and maybe you, Ryan, would really appreciate this. To me, he's the guy in the pickup basketball game who might not always be the best player on the floor, but he's the guy that you look at when they pick up teams, and you say, we're going to win. That guy's on our team. He's going to get every dirty rebound. He's going to guard the most difficult guy on the other team. He's going to take the last shot, and we're going to win because he's on our team. And that's who I think Derek Jeter is. I think that's who he has always been. And anyone who's played a little pickup basketball knows that's the guy you want on your team right there.
I can appreciate that, Tim Kurkjian, but I would think it's safe to say that that's not applicable to this year. But I'm not going to blame Derek Jeter for that, because I'm wondering what the hell is going on with my Yankees. You got 80% of your rotation that's out. You've got a squad with virtual no names, for crying out loud. I asked the question at the beginning of this show, considering the $200+ million that Brian Cashman had available to him this offseason, how you wouldn't give Cano up to $200. It came $200 million. You came up about $25 million short, but you were willing to overpay Jacoby Ellsbury. I'm wondering, is it fair to look at Brian Cashman with a raised eyebrow, considering the absence of production he's getting from a multitude of areas, Mr. Kurkjian? Could you help me out on that?
Well, I think it's fair, yes. But I don't think it's fair to say that, hey, Brian McCann was a terrible sign, because we need to give him a little more time to get going. Same with Ellsbury. Same with some other guys. And it's not Brian Cashman's fault that all these guys got hurt also. So I'm going to defend him to that degree. And maybe 8 years from now, you'll be saying, boy, thank goodness we didn't sign Cano. All valid points on your part, Stephen A. But let's just give this a little bit more time. But I'm starting to worry about your team now, because with all these injuries, I'm not sure they're going to run down the Orioles or anybody else in the wild card race.
Tim, listen, I wasn't trying to point the finger at the strength and conditioning coach, for example, but I did say to Ryan, if George Steinbrenner was alive, God rest his wonderful winning soul, the greatest owner in the world as far as I'm concerned. If George Steinbrenner was still alive, you're trying to tell me he wouldn't be asking questions of everybody. Excuse me, strength and conditioning coach. I mean, why are 4 of my 5 starters injured? I mean, are these guys? I'm like, I just think no one is safe right now, Tim Kurkjian. I think it's safe to ask everybody, are you doing your job to the best of your ability? Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're right in saying that, Stephen A. But I'm just going to give the Yankees and Brian Cashman and everyone else just about 3 more weeks here to figure this out, because we have a trade deadline coming up. And maybe they'll say, all right, we got to go get Cliff Lee, assuming, of course, he's healthy from the Phillies. Or we got to go overpay and we got to go get Cole Hamels from the Phillies.
No more overpaying, Tim Kurkjian. No more overpaying. Haven't we done that enough?
There is no way around this. If you're going to go get Cliff Lee, you're going to overpay to get him. If you're going to go get Cole Hamels and you're going to get somebody to help you, you have to overpay.
But why? But Tim, why even bother? You're 47 and 47. Okay, if you go out and get Price or you get Cliff Lee, we don't know if Cliff Lee or any of them are going to produce. I mean, come on, Tim. Maybe you got to watch this season. Say, look, Derek Jeter, we're sorry. We tried our best, but you know what? We got to position ourselves for the future because I don't know if anything would work with these bats. With these bats, Tim.
I'm with you, Stephen A. You asked me what would George Steinbrenner team do. George would go to the GM and say, go get me Cliff Lee, and 20 minutes later they'd have him. But they would mortgage the future, and they would overpay, and I don't think it's worth it this year to do that because you're right. They have a way, way below average offensive team right now, and they're not going to score enough runs whether Cliff Lee or Cole Hamels shows up anyway.
I mean, Ryan, what did they do, Ryan? Forget that they're the Bronx Bombers? Come on. Even you should explain that, Ryan.
They can't hit it home this year because they can't hit home runs. They can't win at home. They're 18-23 there. Tim, real quick, do you get the sense at all that Jeter's impending retirement will affect their philosophy on whether to be buyers or sellers at the deadline?
No, I don't. In other words, you look at Jeter and they say, all right, we got to go get Troy Tulowitzki to get us through here, but we can't do that because we have to take care of Jeter the rest of the way. If that's what you're asking, no, I don't think that Jeter is a factor here. I think he's going to play the rest of the year. I think he should play the rest of the year. I think he's still the best shortstop on their team, and I don't think he or his impending retirement has much to do with what the Yankees are doing. They need to go get 3 really good hitters somewhere, but they don't need to find it at shortstop. They need outfielders, corner infielders, people like that.
You know what, Tim? You know what, Tim? I love you dearly, and you know that. But you know what I don't like about you, Tim Kurkjian? What I absolutely despise about you, you know every single problem that the New York Yankees have. You even know the solutions that they should investigate, but you have no influence in getting it done. I mean, come on, Tim. Come on, Tim. Could you help out?
You want him to do work in their front office?
I need Tim Kurkjian in their front office. That's what I need. That's how desperate I've gotten. This is ridiculous.
Hey, I'm too short. I'm too old.
Please.
I would be terrible at it.
Please, Tim. You got more energy than everybody else there. You look better than anybody on their roster. Come on, Tim. Do something, man.
No, I'm helpless here. Believe me, I can't get anything done. You're on your own here, Stephen A.
You're probably nice to Brian Cashman, aren't you? You're probably very nice, aren't you?
Yes, he went to Catholic University. That's where my brothers played baseball.
Hey, you remember I got on the Knicks? There was about to be a protest outside of Madison Square Garden before they hired Phil Jackson. I don't mind causing trouble, Tim.
I know you're good at it, Stephen A. You're good at yelling. I'm bad at both of those things.
All right.
Tim, good stuff. Enjoy Minnesota.
Right.
Stay warm, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you, Tim.
Right.
Okay, guys. See you.
You are listening to the best of the Stephen A. Smith and Ryan Ruocco Show on ESPNNewYork.com. Hear them weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York 98.7 FM.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next 6-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The NASCAR Nationwide Series at Chicago, Saturday at 8 Eastern on ESPN2.
You are listening to the best of the Stephen A. Smith and Ryan Ruocco Show on ESPNNewYork.com. Hear them weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York 98.7 FM.
First of all, Brian, are you back to sleeping after all of those restless nights in Bristol?
Not as much as I want, I'll tell you that. Not as much as I want.
Well, Brian, explain to us kind of the gist of your story. Obviously, I've read it, but I don't know if our audience has gotten the chance to. And why LeBron took the deal that he did, the short-term contract with the Cavs, and what he's angling for on the bigger picture.
Yeah, LeBron made a real major move over the weekend, and obviously everybody was so focused on him switching teams that it was easy to miss it. And him taking this contract, which is essentially a one-year contract, he has an option in it for another year. Basically what he is saying is two things. One, he's done taking discounts, and not only is he going to earn the max money, he's not even going to be satisfied with earning the max money in a 4-year deal where he's locked in. He wants to be able to get a raise every single year. He is expecting the salary cap to go up significantly in the next few years, and he doesn't want to be stuck into a deal. So he's going to get he wants to re-sign with a raise every year. I think this is the way he's going to go. I think even after this year, no matter what happens, I believe he will opt out of his contract and then sign another 1-year contract with an option, so that he always has the ability to roll it over or be in the 1-year deal. And I think that ultimately what he's looking for is hopefully by 2017, when the next collective bargaining agreement comes around, that they will either lift the lid on the max contract or abolish it altogether, and that he will be able to get paid on the back end of his career like Jordan did when there was no max contracts back then, and maybe get somewhere at $40 or $50 million for a year. It is, over the last few years, LeBron has realized, these owners are really getting rich. And from what I understand, the tipping point in all of this was that $2 billion sale to the Clippers. LeBron said, I've had enough. These guys are literally earning billions on quality of their team, and we're taking pay cuts to fit under this tax, this line. Those days are over, and especially for me, and that's what this contract signified.
We're talking to Brian Windhorst right here with Stephen A. Ryan Ruocco on ESPN New York 98.7 FM. Brian, that's exactly the explanation Kobe used to justify him taking $48 million over 2 years. He was like, they collectively bargained for this. That's their problem. Let them figure this out, because they want to do all of that, but then come to us to take pay cuts. I'm not doing that. That was Kobe's position, even though some would argue it was to the Lakers' detriment in terms of free agency and what have you. But obviously, I'm assuming you're not saying that LeBron is planning on leaving Cleveland after just a year or two. What you're saying is that he's just making sure that he is about getting the max every single year. And to me, Brian, if that's the case, I love it, and I don't think anybody can insult it, because he was willing to bet on himself, because one injury, one career-threatening or career-ending injury can nullify everything. He's obviously willing to bet on himself. That's what I take from this.
Right, so obviously a situation like this would not have benefited a guy like Derrick Rose. If Derrick Rose had signed a 1-year deal 3-4 years ago, he would be in trouble right now. But LeBron believes in himself, and he also has huge off-court earnings to protect himself. And look, he's doing just fine, okay? I mean, look at the cars that were getting moved to Cleveland last week. I think he's doing okay. But what he's saying is, look, he has only earned the max salary 3 times in his 11-year career. And this year will be the first year he's ever earning more than $20 million in a year. Shaq earned $20 million in a year 9 consecutive times. This is going to be Kobe's 7th straight year he earns $20-plus million. Last year, Kobe became the second player in history to earn $30 million in a year. All of these guys are way ahead of LeBron, and part of it is the rules changed with LeBron and max contracts after Kobe and Shaq came into the league, and Garnett is another example. Kevin Garnett was making $20 million a year by his 5th season. LeBron will be doing it in his 11th, or 12th. So some of it is the rules have changed, and some of it is LeBron has sacrificed money in the past, and he's just saying that's just not happening anymore. And I do think also as a side factor here, yes, he keeps maximum pressure on the organization. The organization now knows that it can't mess around. It can't try to take a step back. It can't say that this is going to be a rebuilding year. Like, let's picture LeBron was with the Brooklyn Nets. And the Brooklyn Nets, obviously, after losing $100 million this year, are cutting salary. They're letting guys walk, and they're cutting salary. Well, if LeBron James was on that team and he had a one-year contract, you can bet they wouldn't be doing it. Because what LeBron's point is, yeah, you may have lost some money this year in your overall balance sheet, but we see where the value of the teams are going, and you're not losing money. And so that's what this is. It isn't a direct commentary on Dan Gilbert, but it absolutely handcuffs Dan Gilbert when he makes big decisions about the team.
Talking with Brian Windhorst on the Lexus of Route 10 Celebrity Hotline. It's interesting stuff, Brian. I thought you had an interesting interaction that you recounted in the story where LeBron was talking about money and wondering about where it could go. But he doesn't like to do that, right? This isn't something he likes to talk about publicly?
Yeah, he doesn't like talking about his money. When he did the Beats deal last month, which both of these conversations actually took place in Indianapolis, it was like pulling teeth to try to get him to talk about an investment that he made that was a massive payoff. I'm saying it got him $30 million, but in all honesty, no. I don't know. I actually think $30 million's low.
I do know. I'm sorry to interject.
Stephen A., I don't think it's as high as you're saying, but it's somewhere between what you're saying and what I'm saying. But go ahead.
You said 1%. I said 11%.
I think he had a chance to get 11%, but you know what? It doesn't matter. He got a lot of money there, and the reason you and I don't know is because he just won't talk about it. And there was another conversation we had last year, also in Indianapolis, where we were talking about the max salary. I don't even remember how it came up, but he basically said that nobody even knows how much money I've left on the table. And he said, I've done that because even at the max salary, I'm underpaid. And if this was baseball, I'd be getting paid huge, huge, huge. The only thing I can ever remember about LeBron talking about his value was, you remember when Josh Childress went over to play in Greece, and for a little while there, it looked like guys were going to get money to go overseas. There was some billionaires who owned some teams over there or whatever, and I remember LeBron saying to me, you could get me to go play in Europe if you paid me $50 million. So that seems to me, in his head, that's probably what he believes he's worth, is $50 million a year, and he's going to try to figure out a way to get there. It may not happen, but he's not going to get himself locked in to a contract where if he does have the chance to make $40 or $50 million in a year, he's stuck making 25 or 26.
No,
the interesting part. You know the interesting part that I don't think everybody is considered, Brian, Ryan.
Yeah,
LeBron is so astute at this. He's becoming smarter and smarter at this, that everybody's looking at it as something that's beneficial to the modern-day athlete, and I applaud LeBron James that he's not doing anything wrong, but it's going to make the owners that much more stringent and strident in their pursuit during collective bargaining negotiations to police themselves and shield themselves from this happening again. And chances are they're going to pull it off. That's just me.
I think really if basketball was completely 100% fair, you wouldn't see guys like Jody Meeks getting $6 million. What you would see is LeBron making $30 million and everybody else on the team making $1 or $2 or $3 million. And the way the collective bargaining is set up is to benefit the masses. So you have the average player salary up over $5 million, and guys who are signing, Darren Collison getting $5 million a year, for example. And you got LeBron, frustrated. He's banging his head on the ceiling at 20. And so, it's got to either go one way or the other. Either you spread the money out evenly to all the players, which is the way they have it now, or the top-heavy guys get the lion's share and everybody else gets scrapped. And so it's not just the owners, guys like LeBron, are fighting. It's also because it's one man, one vote. LeBron can't get everybody to vote his way. So, part of the way it is now is so that there's a middle class in the NBA. And that middle class is obviously bigger than the top, and they're going to have voting power. And that's why we've gotten to where we've gotten. But I do think the guy who should be paying attention to this very closely is Kevin Durant. And I would expect him to consider this heavily when he goes into his next negotiation in 2016. Why shouldn't Kevin Durant do the same thing, take one-year deals? Now, if I'm Carmelo Anthony, I know that LeBron and Carmelo had discussed, and from what we can tell, Melo is signing into a 5-year deal. But you got to wonder if LeBron and Melo at least talked about this. As you guys know, I have been a big proponent that Melo made a mistake, that he should have just stayed in his contract and waited for a year and waited to see what his options were next year, because it would have benefited him both short and long term. Melo has consistently not been on the same page as LeBron when it comes to contracts, and it's cost him. Back in 2006, when LeBron took a 3-year deal, he set the tone, and then Wade and Bosh followed him, and so did Chris Paul a year later. Those guys wanted to have flexibility. Melo took a 5-year deal, even though they were all doing their deals at the same time. And as a result, when LeBron and Bosh and Wade were free and joining up, Melo was stuck in his contract. So it could have been LeBron, Wade, and Melo in Miami. What did Melo have to do to get out of that mistake? He had to force a trade to New York and deplete the Knicks so that when they got good, they didn't have the assets they needed to play or improve. And I think he might have made a mistake again. I think it would have made so much more sense if Melo just waited and maybe was able to renegotiate his deal when the salary cap is up. And why not sign a long-term deal when you're 31 or 32 as opposed to when you're 30? Stretch that earning out all the way to your 36, 37 as opposed to 35. I just think that Melo has not followed LeBron's lead in contracts in his career. It's cost him in certain ways. It certainly hasn't cost him money. Melo has made more money than LeBron in basketball salary. But over the long haul, LeBron might have him. And they're doing the exact opposite thing again here. LeBron taking a short deal, it appears, because Melo hasn't signed yet, it appears Melo taking the long deal.
Brian, terrific stuff. Great perspective. Love that piece and appreciate you hopping on in the midst of your sleepless days, which you're continuing to chat with us. Thank you as always, Brian.
Okay, guys, take care.
Take care. I'll respond to all of that in a minute.
You know what? And this time, Stephen, I'm not going to kill the tease. How about that? We're going to keep the tease alive with Stephen A. and Ruocco on ESPN New York.
You are listening to the best of the Stephen A. Smith and Ryan Ruocco Show on ESPNNewYork.com. Hear them weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York 98.7 FM.
The next big thing, the next new kid, the next overnight sensation, the next rookie, one to watch, the next Hall of Famer, the next intimidator, the next six-time, the next king. Next. Who's next? Let's find out. Names are made here. The NASCAR Nationwide Series at Chicago, Saturday at 8 Eastern on ESPN2.
You are listening to the best of the Stephen A. Smith and Ryan Ruocco Show on ESPNNewYork.com. Hear them weekday afternoons from 1 to 3 on ESPN New York 98.7 FM.
Tonight, Stephen, you and I and the entire country, and especially our city, will have our eyes focused on one of our favorite athletes and someone we completely admire. Say the name the way you love to say it,
Derek Jeter!
That's right.
Listen, listen, in all seriousness, man, you know, sometimes you got, you know, the haters like Skip Bayless and others, you know, that poo-poo on such celebratory things when it pertains to Derek Jeter and all of this other stuff. But not only was he great at what he did, not only is he a champion 5 times over, El Capitan, along the way, but he did it in an era when there was every excuse in the world to denigrate Major League Baseball players at every turn, to raise an eyebrow, to be skeptical about them, to be a bit apprehensive and reticent about them. When he spoke, you listened. When he articulated himself, you believed what he had to say, because there has never been anything that is phony about Derek Jeter. And there certainly has never been anything that didn't involve simply, you know, his commitment to winning. I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him a lot. And I think that what you're going to see from people is, you know, just folks reminding you of who he is and what he meant to the game of baseball. There's a level of appreciation that you have to have when it comes to him, because, you know, again, it's rare that you find him. Is he a once-in-a-lifetime player? No. But he's elite on so many levels, in so many ways, and he transcends the sport because of how he carried and represented himself. And it's just, he's going to be missed, and it's going to be nice to see him honored tonight, because nationwide, no matter where you go, there's always going to be an incredibly strong level of appreciation for Derek Jeter, who he was, how he carried himself, and how he represented the sport of baseball, and how he's been everything that a professional athlete is supposed to be. So I'm looking forward to seeing that tonight, because I think that he's going to deserve all the accolades he'll receive.
I totally agree. And I think that, this is kind of going to be baseball's goodbye to him. Now, we're going to have our moments in New York and at Yankee Stadium and for the Yankee community and those final games that he plays in the Bronx, which, the postseason isn't out of the question, but it certainly looks like it's going to be difficult for the Yankees to get there this year with the team that they have and the injuries they've endured and the fact that they just can't hit. But we're going to have that chance in New York, and that will be our story, in September as we watch him for the final times. I hope we get to see him in October, but hope is about all you have at this moment, because it wouldn't feel quite right if we don't get to see him play in that month again. But for baseball, this could very well be your last chance to sort of say goodbye. So it will be the sports send-off for him, and he has been the face of the sport. And you think about it, Stephen, it is so rare, especially, it's become more and more rare with the increase in attention and outlets and technology to keep what you want private, to let your game speak for itself, to not have slanderous stories bring you down a peg. There was a legend that was created about this guy. There was a mythos early on in his career as the affable, fun-loving, good-looking, excellent champion shortstop for the New York Yankees, and that legend has only grown over 2 decades, yet he has not given us any reason to dumb it down, to peg it down. He's just continued to allow us to believe that the mythos is true, both in his performance on the field and in the way he's carried himself, which is so rare. We see great players. That happens. Do you see great players who are universally lauded and respected and admired the way that this guy is? You just don't see that, Stephen.
Just the way he carries himself, the way he talks to people. I mean, you look at him and the admiration, because, look, people get on my damn nerves all the time. We know that. Mm-hmm. And we know I'm not averse to cursing anybody out. That's why it's, I'm honored to be working for Walt Disney, because that's not who Walt Disney is. Walt Disney's about Mickey Mouse. It's about making people smile, making people laugh, and making people happy. It's not exactly my strength. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm going to say what I feel. I'm going to mean what I say. I'm not going to give 2 cents what anybody thinks about it, if I'm right. And you got a guy like Derek Jeter. I mean, just even when he talks to you and he's firm in his position, I mean, even his tone comes across as ultra respectful. He's just a unique person. And we have been so blessed, so lucky to have him. I'm just saddened that, the New York Yankees are in the state of flux that they're in right now, because it would have been apropos to see him go out in the postseason, because Lord knows he's been in enough postseason appearances. He's a fixture there. So that's the only downside. But, that can't be helped.
No, I mean, I hope that they somehow could squeeze their way in, maybe to a wild card game or something, but without that possibility seeming probable at this point, this will be the night that baseball says goodbye to him and honors him in that way. And it is so interesting to me. Just when you see different guys throughout the major leagues, it's amazing how many of them, wear number 2 in Jeter's honor. There's a generation of kids who grew up wearing that number because of Derek. And it's not, we always talk about, well, where's the next Derek Jeter? How do you create it? It's not something you create. No. It is a fusion of rare circumstances and rare ability and rare characteristics just of who he is. You do not often find somebody who's just as good at baseball as he is, to put it in the most layman terms possible. As much as we talk about his intangibles, his tangibles have been matched by maybe 1 or 2 shortstops in the history of the game. Then you make him this magnetic, good-looking character. You place him in the media capital of our country and the world, and you put him in the middle of championship teams and give him memorable October moments. Stephen, that is a fusion of circumstances that is just not easy to duplicate or replicate, and because of that, you can't just say, well, this guy is going to be the replacement. This guy is going to be the next guy. No, to get people to connect with an athlete the way that they do with this guy, it is not common whatsoever. And I don't think you can't just, make it out of clay. You don't know if it'll ever happen again or when it will.
You don't know if it'll ever happen again, and that's the sad part. But to me, sadder at the moment is the fact that he's in his last season. He's on his last legs. He's not the player that he used to be, which we all know, even though he's had some up moments as well as some down moments this season.